I can't even begin to tell you the suffering of these kids, these people, not knowing if all of a sudden you're going to be not able to drive your car, not able to walk. It's really so sad and so tragic.
Patrick Gerandi is an author, musician, and founder of San Rocco Therapeutics. His life changed in 1992 when his son was diagnosed with thalassemia, a rare and often overlooked genetic disease.
They said he wouldn't make it to be a teenager.
Determined to change that outcome, Patrick set out to find a cure.
We use a disabled HIV virus. We put a new gene in it, infuse the gene back into the patient. Cured. Now we have a product that's 30% better than the approved product, and which will cost 75% less.
From Patrick's story, we learn about perseverance and the difficulties of confronting a broken healthcare system in America.
The system itself is just so corrupted and so inefficient, and something's got to be done.
This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Jan Jekielek. Patrick Gerandi, such a pleasure to have you on American Thought Leaders.
I'm honored, thoroughly.
Your son in 1992 was diagnosed with thalassemia, very serious disease similar to sickle cell, and you set it upon yourself to actually find a cure, and you did. And tell me how this all happened.
Yeah, sure. And I'm a rags to riches story. I was on Oprah Winfrey show, Rag to Riches, Playgirl magazine, one of America's most eligible bachelors with Sylvester Stallone and Magic Johnson. And I got shocked in 1992 October, so this is actually my 33rd anniversary. And my son was diagnosed with thalassemia. They said he wouldn't make it to be a teenager. Thalassemia is a defective beta globin gene, and it's a cousin or sister disease to sickle cell disease, which also is created by a defective beta globin gene. And there were no matches to give him a bone marrow transplant, and I had to figure out what to do.
So, I mean, of course, you're nothing to do with the medical sciences here whatsoever, but so what got in your head?
Well, after the anguish, I began reading. My friends went to St. Luke Hospital, the University of Chicago. Of course, back then, the internet wasn't like it is today. And I received miles and miles of faxes. I bought every hematological book or book on hematology that I could possibly get my hands on, and learned everything about the disease that I could. I didn't want to transfuse my son because in 1992, there were still no antibodies for HIV and for hepatitis C. So I scoured the world and found a professor who was using experimental medicine to stimulate the fetal hemoglobin. My son and I went to Children's Hospital of Oakland Research Institute in Oakland, where he lived for 3 months. And we were doing a product called arginine butyrate. It was one of the first gene therapies, actually, because it stimulated the fetal hemoglobin to again produce. I couldn't remain there because it was $70,000 for 40 days. My son had to be hospitalized because it was IV. So I moved to Italy, 25 miles away from my grandfather's town, forever, basically, and opened up a medical center, San Rocco Medical Center in Altamura, Italy. My son was being treated there, and it worked until about 2000, and by 2000 anyway, the blood had become infinitely more safe, and my son began transfusing every 15 to 20 days. In 2000, I met a researcher, French researcher, named Michel Sedelin. He published in Nature magazine that he cured 6 generations of thalassemic mice. I read it. I met him in Rome when he was at a seminar, and I knew that I had found the cure for my son. I knew it. In 2003, Michelle Settling was desperate for finance. And of course, as I said in the beginning, I had been a rags to riches story, so I had money to pay, to spend, and I did. In 2005, I bought the intellectual property. And in 2010, San Rocco Therapeutics delivered the world's first batch of gene therapy, because up until then it was made one person at a time, about $1 million a person. We were able to make enough for about 10 people for $1.3 million. And it's been an incredible story.
So I wanted to try to understand, you focused, this whole time, you focused your work of San Rocco Therapeutics just on this particular therapy, figuring just this particular therapy.
Yeah, so San Rocco is dedicated to this therapy basically. However, over the years, we've become involved in so many different rare diseases because people would reach out to us. You know, parents in desperation would read about me, find my story, find me, sometimes through friends. I'm also a musician, so sometimes they would come to me after concerts. And we actually have dealt with dozens of very rare diseases and assisted people whenever we possibly could. I'm a Catholic and a big follower of St. Francis, actually, and you know, let me be an instrument of your peace. And we did what we could. So San Rocco, we're specifically a company that will bring accessible gene therapy to the world for sickle cell disease and thalassemia. That's our main goal. However, we're a rare disease company.
And so explain to me, you know, in 2010, so now we're 15 years from the present, but in 2010, this is a gene replacement therapy,
yes,
right, that we're talking about. So explain to me what that is, how that works.
Sure. So gene replacement just means you change basically the engine. So you've got a car, right? It's not working properly, change the engine. So that's the beta globin gene. And we use a disabled HIV virus. We put a new gene in it. We give the patient chemotherapy. We take his stem cells. We incubate them with the gene, billions and billions of copies. We infuse the gene back into the patient. Cured. He is now creating adult hemoglobin.
And how does that, I guess, stick, if that makes sense? Explain to me how that's different than, you know, just basically taking a treatment instead of a conventional treatment.
Well, okay, so
what makes the body start producing?
Well, because we put into the stem cells the beta globin gene, the fixed beta globin gene.
Right. And
from then on out, the body makes beta globin gene, the correct beta globin gene. It's no longer defective.
Mm-hmm. And the stem cells basically just replenish themselves in the body after this.
Yes.
I see. Well, that's remarkable.
It's truly remarkable, and it's kind of funny because I remember in 2005 when I bought the product, and I didn't really want to buy the product, to be quite honest. Over the years, I've had a wonderful trip. In 1995, John Walton of Walmart became my partner. Great guy. Chrissy, his wife, I love, a wonderful woman. They had a son, Lucas, who 1987 was born in 1990. I believe he was diagnosed with Wilms tumor. And arginine butyrate that my son was on had an application for Wilms tumor. And John and I became partners. We were partners until 2004. The Walton family in our project in San Rocco put in about $24 million, all told, from beginning to end. And John unfortunately died in a plane crash. I ended up with San Rocco, and I looked to get help. I talked to Bayer, I talked to Novartis, who back then I think was Chiba Geigy or Sandoz. I mean, I talked to all of these pharmaceutical companies because I didn't feel that, you know, I could ever do this myself. And they were all very polite, and they patted me on the back and told me what a wonderful father I was, but that it was science fiction. It was crazy. I mean, literally, I'm a trader. You know, I made my money on the Board of Trade in Chicago, the Mercantile Exchange, and then became members of the New York Stock Exchange, had a Swiss banking license, all of that. So I'm a trader. And they bet 100 to 1 that I would fail, because for them, gene therapy in 2005 was science fiction. And so I was lucky, and then in 2010, we finally had a batch of gene therapy ready to treat patients.
And so what happened?
Well, a lot of wonderful people gathered around. Professor Chris Ballas is one of them, and there's so many of them. Michelle Sedlin, I'll forget all their names, Susan Perrine, and it was like this team effort. Most of them weren't paid, because they knew by that time that I was spending only my own money. I didn't, I raised very little money. Joe Feldman, my partner, got involved. The Feldman family put in money. But, all in all, my company, which basically is 32 years old because we were formed in 1993, we weren't always San Rocco Therapeutics. The name has been changed. But we were, total 70 investors, and out of the 70 investors, 60 of them invested like $50,000. So we were able to generate all of these wonderful people. And like I said, many of them never got a paycheck. And we put our heads together and were able to tweak the product that I bought in 2005 and create a better product, and we were the first in the world. In 2012, our product was the first in the world to treat a patient.
What happened with the patient?
So we treated actually 4 patients total, and we decided to use myelosuppression. So myeloablation is when you kill all the bone marrow, and you need to do that, unfortunately.
Well, so this is the thing I was trying to get at earlier. How do you get the new stem cells to stick, right? Now you're telling me how.
Yeah, so in 2012, we erred on the side of caution, and we gave the patients 8 milligrams per kilogram of busulfan instead of 14 to 16. So we killed maybe 30-40% of their bone marrow. One patient was treated off the protocol because of age, but 3 were treated on the protocol. 2 out of 3 today still have a reduction in transfusions of about 43%. So it worked, but only halfway. And John Tisdale, who's a wonderful friend and the head of gene and cell therapy at the NIH, a guy who could have went and made millions and millions, but instead decided to be a public servant, he was always sure that we should have done myeloablation. And if you do myeloablation, ablative therapy, you will get the patients cured. But we treated the patients back. We were the first ones to treat in 2012. Those patients today have a 43% reduction. Now we will use myeloablation. Now we'll use a product that's actually manufactured in a more modern way, and we have tweaked the product that it's actually 30% more effective than the old product, and we'll cure these patients without a problem.
What's the situation with your son?
Rocco is my son and has nothing to do with San Rocco. San Rocco is a patron saint of hopeless disease, right? During the plague in Europe in the 1400s, he was selfless and a wonderful story for us. But Rocco, who has my grandfather's name, who raised me, he's 35, and he's never complained once. He's had operations. He's had to go into transfuse, hundreds of times now, etc., and has had issues. But thank you. He's a wonderful man, and he will be cured within 6 months.
So let me see if I've got this straight. You started out at the beginning, transfusions weren't going to work because of the potential for these diseases when there was frequent transfusions. You actually got him basic treatment, the one that you mentioned, the sort of first type of treatment. Then he started getting transfusions. Transfusions became safer. Then this product came online, and we were able to treat people. And it took basically to today to have a product that can be a complete cure.
Yes. Yes. There are 2 cures actually in the United States that are authorized, gene therapy cures. One is called Lyfgenia by Bluebird Bio. It's $3.1 million. And the other is a CRISPR product called Casgevy. Now, CRISPR doesn't replace the gene. CRISPR edits the gene, meaning that they basically go in and snip the BCL11A gene. The job of the BCL11A gene is to suppress the gamma globin gene, which is fetal hemoglobin. So when we're a year and a half old, basically, this BCL11A suppresses our fetal hemoglobin, and then naturally the adult hemoglobin starts working. So CRISPR snips the BCL, they disables it. Now with the BCL11A out of the way, the patient is again expressing fetal hemoglobin. There was recently an article that came out last week, actually, and that is that you have gene replacement, you have gene editing. Now, we all know that no one can afford, or few can afford, 3.1 million or 2.2 million. But the difference is that mine is gene replacement, and our patients will have the adult hemoglobin, which that's what nature intended. And the patients that do CRISPR, which is called Casgevy, they will, for the rest of their lives, express the majority fetal hemoglobin. There's no one that can say that it's possible that fetal hemoglobin may be better for an adult to make than adult hemoglobin, but no one really knows because CRISPR really is brand new. I mean, the first patient was treated, like 5 years ago.
So we still need those long-term studies to see the outcome of those people. So there's people that have been treated both through gene replacement, which is a product that's similar to what you have. And there's another product that is editing, like you said. And then and what does yours bring to the table? The cost becomes more accessible. Is that the idea?
Ours is about 30% more efficacious to the Lyfgenia product. Actually, they have Lyfgenia and Zynteglo. Zynteglo is for thalassemia. Lyfgenia is for sickle cell disease. Lyfgenia costs $3.1 million and Zynteglo $2.8 million, but they're the exact same drug. And our product is 30% more effective than that product. So there's no doubt we're going to be curing these patients. And I've made a promise that we would keep the cost under $1 million a patient for the next 10 years. So I think initially it'll be about $800,000. And these products cost a lot. It costs my company a lot of money to cure patients, but we believe that $800,000 is a price that we can offer accessible therapy that people can afford, that the government of the United States can afford, that the insurance companies can afford, and as well build our company stronger so that we can do more work in the orphan disease field.
In the orphan disease field, what does that mean?
Well, so there's 6,000 orphan diseases. That means they have to be under 200,000 patients in the United States, 250,000 in Europe. And I promised when Rocco was diagnosed, I'll never forget it, and we went to Pesaro, Italy, to see about a match, and we found out that there was no match in the family. I guess probably the only time in my life I can ever remember being desperate. I promised the Lord that if he would help me save Rocco's life, that I would dedicate the rest of my life to fighting these rare diseases. Because when he was diagnosed and they told me this word thalassemia, I mean, I couldn't spell it. I could barely pronounce it. And then the explanation and the education about all of these rare diseases and all of these families who are stuck with this just egregious, just, horrific news. And I'm more fortunate than others because I had cake, I had the resources. And so anyway, so that's what I mean by we will dedicate the rest, my life anyway, and after I'm gone, which I'm sure it won't be that long, I hope that, the company is around, that we can continue to dedicate, the resources, not to making the CEO rich or, the company rich. Of course, we want to be good to our investors. We want to make a solid company. We certainly are capitalists, but we're capitalists kind of in the old-fashioned way, where the first one to sacrifice is the boss.
So, and what happened between 2010 and 2025?
First of all, everything that I'm telling you is documented in a court case in New York Supreme Court. The product was sabotaged by Bluebird Bio and Third Rock Ventures. And I didn't know it, of course, but the product I handed over, I relinquished my control of the product in 2011, believing that things would go ahead nicely. Finally, in 2017, I filed a lawsuit because of the Bluebird Bio product going faster than our product, and knowing that the Bluebird Bio product was inferior to our product. We did discovery, and in the discovery, we found the PowerPoints from Bluebird Bio where they said that the San Rocco product was 3 to 5 times more efficient. They had to get a hold of it. They had to destroy our company, basically, and that's what happened. In 2021, basically, we settled, and we got back on the horse. We improved the product with Professor Frank Park, University of Tennessee, Professor Andrew Wilbur at Southern Illinois University, John Tisdale at the NIH. And I apologize if I forget anybody, but it's really a team effort. And now we have a product that's 30% better than the approved product, and which will cost basically, 75% less.
And with respect to your son, why has he waited this long to go for the cure itself?
Sure. So the cure was only approved in December of 2023.
Okay.
So Casgevy and Lyfgenia were approved in the United States in December of 2023. But as of today, I would guess that less than 50 patients have done the product. A lot of it is because Lyfgenia is in a black box, meaning that when doctors prescribe it, they have to tell the patients that there have been a couple of cases of leukemia in the past. I don't think it has anything to do with the beta globin gene, and neither do most researchers. But sickle cell disease patients have to do hydroxyurea every day or every week, etc. And it's a little bit different than the Thal patients. But so, yeah, my son wouldn't have done it because it hasn't been approved until December of 2023.
Well, and you're saying that there are significant side effects that you might be concerned about.
Yeah, so anything you got to be concerned about, that's for sure. Bluebird had 2 cases, I believe, of leukemia in patients that were treated. That it was like 6% of the people treated, roughly. Generally speaking, sickle cell disease patients will get leukemia anyway, about 3% of them before they die. So it was like double. and they halted the clinical trials, etc. However, most people don't believe that it's the lentiviral vector. The lentiviral vector, which is the disabled AIDS virus, has actually been in people since 2003 or 2004 with the AIDS. They were using in experimental AIDS potions. So we don't believe it's the lentiviral vector. But however, like anything, they have to do, my son will have to do myeloablation. There are problems with that, with all of that. However, if you have to wait it out and doing transfusions the rest of your life, iron chelations, everything that comes with it, a patient health is, of course, recaptured. And for the government and for the health providers, whether it's one payer as in Italy or as in the United States, these patients are costing probably in the United States $150,000 a year anyway. So, for us in 5 or 6 years, they paid our product at that price. $800,000 has paid for itself. But even in Europe, where prices may be somewhat cheaper, the healthcare provider will find it in their best interest to do our product. But yes, there's always problems, or it could be problems to any disease or any medicine. And so far, so good. I think that the results in gene replacement and gene editing are fantastic.
And so, is it fair to say that your product has a lower risk profile, and that's the reason why your son is doing that, or is that?
Yes, definitely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Otherwise my son will have to continue to transfuse every 15 to 20 days. We'll have to continue to take the risk with the blood, have to continue to do iron chelators.
What is the name of it again?
Thalassemia?
No, the product. Your
Minirolu.
Minirolu.
Oh, I'm glad you asked me that.
Let's go back for a moment. Okay. So when it comes to Minirolu, which is your product, the San Rocco Therapeutics product, it has a better risk profile. If I understand, just kind of explain that to me.
Yeah, we believe it has a better risk profile because it's 30% more efficient than the approved product. So efficacy means you use less product. Less product means less toxicity, if there is any toxicity. But if there is toxicity, it's less toxicity. So yes, we believe that it'll be safer.
But aren't there trials that would reflect this, or how?
Well, so we will be in patients again within 6 months in the United States and in Europe. And this administration has been very supportive. Senator Tim Scott last week, I met with his team, Megan, wonderful people. I've met with Secretary Kennedy's people. They're very supportive. And also in Europe, where we're dealing, our principal investigator is the Surgeon General of Italy, Franco Locatelli. So everyone's very supportive. I would say that most everybody knows who I am. And for that reason, in a certain sense, there's a bit of trust. And our clinical trial is still open, but we haven't treated patients since 2015. I told you that. Mm-hmm. So now the clinical trial is continuing. And maybe it was best this way, even talking about, the court cases and sabotage, etc. Maybe it was best that way because we improved it, right? So in 2021, when we settled, we were, in a certain sense, forced to look at everything again. We were lucky enough to find researchers like Professor Park, University of Tennessee, Andrew Wilbur, who I've known for a long time, Southern Illinois, John Tisdale, because we actually modified the product. We've made it safer. We've made it more efficacious. So, the Lord works in mysterious ways.
Mm-hmm. So, the current treatment, you're basically wiping out the existing bone marrow.
Yes.
and then you're using this modified virus to put in to basically create stem cells which have a new gene now replaced, which produces hemoglobin properly.
Yes.
That's it.
That's it. You got it. Change the engine.
And afterwards, are there kind of drugs that people have to take?
No. It's done. You're done. I mean, obviously with myeloablation, myeloablative therapy, which you do in bone marrow transplants, etc., you're for 30 days you have to be very careful, and then 60 days you have to be careful, etc. 30 days you're hospitalized, But yeah, then you're done.
Fantastic. And so basically you are at the moment recruiting for your clinical trial.
Yes.
And it sounds like your son's going to be one of them.
Yes.
Okay, now I got it.
Yes, my son will be one of the first ones. And Incurable, right, is actually, I called Christy Walton, I don't remember, last year or something, and I said, Christy, your family's been so good. And I'd like to maybe name the product after John, her late husband, And she goes, Pat, I don't think John would necessarily like that. She said, he was always, for the little guy, the underdog, and he was. John Walton was a wonderful guy. She said, name it after the patients. So, MINIROLU are the first two letters of 4 patients.
Of the patients back in 2010.
Yeah, from the beginning.
Correctly.
These are
right.
thalassemia, sickle cell patients, actually. One, Lou, is one that had Wilms tumor. But these are the 4 patients, the kind of the cornerstone of the company that, brought it all together. These are 4 of the patients, so we decided to call it Incurable.
Tell me more about these orphan diseases and, how the medical system deals with them today.
So we have 6,000 orphan diseases. In 1983, the Orphan Disease Act was introduced. Marlene Hafner, who at the time they called the godmother of the Orphan Disease Act, who's a wonderful woman who I speak to today even, they said there's no money going into curing these diseases because there's no money in it, because there's too few of them. And they came up with these rules and regulations, stimulations. They gave 50% tax credit to people who would invest in clinical trials for orphan diseases. Today it's 25%. They would give all sorts of stimulation through finance, etc., to companies who would dedicate themselves to curing rare diseases. And it was a wonderful legislation. And that there's 6,000 rare diseases. I believe that the 1983 Act needs to be revisited, to be quite honest, because I think there needs to be some kind of separation, because you have a disease like sickle cell disease where 100,000 patients can't be treated like a disease, leukocyte adhesion deficiency, where you only have like 100 patients. You have to have different rules. But it was a wonderful piece of legislation, and that's why they were called rare diseases. In the end, they were orphaned by big pharma, supposedly, and that's why today they call them orphan diseases as well as rare diseases.
And how many companies are there that are trying to go after some of these?
Yeah, so up until '83, there weren't a lot of them, but in the 90s and then the 2000s, a lot of companies realized there was huge money in the orphan diseases created by the Orphan Drug Act. So now there's hundreds and hundreds of companies that are going after these rare diseases. I would say, how many of them are successful? Obviously, we all know that it's not real easy to ever get into clinical trials. We're one of the few companies of our size, for sure, that ever got into clinical trials. But there's how many, I don't want to say ethical companies are doing it, but there's a lot of companies doing it. And I'd like to, as well, make a statement that I'm all for pharma. And I hate when I hear people say I'm against big pharma. You know what? in 1830 or 1730, 50% of the people made it to live to be 30. 1830, they lived to make it to 35. Today, we make it almost to 80. And we couldn't have done that without the pharmaceutical companies. So when people bash the pharmaceutical companies, like with this bludgeon, I'm against that, because there's a lot of wonderful pharmaceutical companies, and we certainly need more of them. And I've met so many ethical, wonderful people in the pharmaceutical industry. Unfortunately, they're not all that way, and so we need to have a little bit more, pay a little bit more attention because of price reasonings, because of stock and options and warrants and all of those things. But I don't want to go on.
There's been some significant changes in HHS and its sub-agencies since this new administration has taken on. You mentioned that you've spoken with Bobby Kennedy Jr.'s people, the HHS secretaries and so forth. What do you think about those changes?
In infant mortality, the United States, last time I would look, was around 64. Italians live to be 82.7 years of age. Overall, Europeans, 81.5. Americans live to be around 78.5. So, and we spend anywhere, depending how you calculate it, 3 to 5 times more per capita. So, if nothing else, it tells you that the healthcare system in the United States is completely broken. Now, I'm not going to blame, I don't know who did it, and I don't care about Democrats, Republicans, I don't care about all of that. But anyone who wants to defend the U.S. healthcare system is a bit ingenuine, I would say that, to be kind. So
you like the fact that there's reform on the horizon?
Of course. I can't say that everything that HHS is doing is right or wrong. I don't know everything they're doing, first of all. But there needs to be a dramatic change. I mean, if it was possible, me personally, Pat Girani, I'd just start from scratch. But you can't start from scratch because we've got millions of people that are already in it. But yes, I welcome Bobby Kennedy, or if his name was, Dr. Doolittle, anyone that's going to bring dramatic change, I welcome. And like I said, infant mortality, longevity, and cost. Those are the 3 things that all you got to look at. Now, and you can put all the experts in the world on a panel and they can tell you how everything is great or not great, whatever. Here, infant mortality, longevity, and cost. The United States is in serious trouble with their healthcare system. And again, anyone who defends it is, the kindest word I can use, ingenuine.
So that's fascinating. For you, it's those 3 metrics, yes, which are really the measure of a successful healthcare system.
Yeah, we'll do everything to save our infant children. Anything. It's the most emotional time in our lives, so infant mortality is huge. And longevity. What's more important than, everybody, living a long, healthy life? And then, of course, cost. And so, again, I have to debate people from time to time. I just got back, actually, from Burkina Faso, where I was invited to give suggestions on what they can do for their 65,000 sickle cell disease patients. But in the end, the United States healthcare is a shambles. It's a joke. And not a funny one. It's tragic. Just people, trying to figure out if they're going to, pay their heat or they're going to buy their medicine. I have many people in my family who, the doctor says, take this pill every day, and they're cutting it in half because they just can't afford it. And all of the crazy, what do you call it when you have to pay the first, deductibles. And then, the nightmares that have, I had a friend of mine recently treated he got surgery on his hip, and he got a $12,000 bill, and then he said, but you told me I could go to that hospital, and they said yes, but the laboratory of that hospital sends their stuff out to another laboratory, so we don't do it. I mean, it literally is a nightmare. I mean, if there's one negative thing, I would say, generally speaking, of the United States of America, it's the healthcare system. And in my opinion, the secretary of HHS has the toughest job of anyone, because it is literally a tragic joke. And again, I know a lot about the FDA. I've dealt with many people with the FDA, etc. And there's so many good, dedicated people. John Tisdale is a close friend of mine, probably for between 25 and 30 years. John could have left and made millions and millions and millions, in working for some private pharmaceutical company, etc. So there's dedicated people, but the system itself is just so corrupted and so inefficient, and something's got to be done.
What was your advice to the Burkina Faso government about their patients?
Yeah, so hydroxyurea is a staple for sickle cell disease patients, and they're not getting it. And they are not getting it because hydroxyurea is made by Squibb and they can't afford it. However, there are generic products made in India and Nigeria, and that was the biggest suggestion I have. And it was great. They're great people, very hospitable, everything was great. And the other thing that I suggested is a bit off the wall, and that is that when you do research with sick patient cells, it can be cost prohibitive. So in other words, I need sick patient cells who have sickle cell disease, so I have to go to, I won't name the company that we go to, but I have to go to XYZ company. They'll charge you $25,000, $30,000 for these sick patient cells. So I told Burkina Faso, you've got 65,000 patients. Open yourself up a business and sell your sick patient cells to people that are doing research. They were basically the number one and the number two things that I suggested.
Interesting. Well, so you really have had to think outside of the box all the way from the beginning, right?
I was a shoe shine at about 6 or 7 years old, and after that, I was a busboy, and then I washed dishes in a hospital. I was about 15. Then I was a mechanic at about 16. Then I went in the military at 17. Judge Clarence Bryant kind of recommended it. So I was military to jail. So military was a lot better. And then I got out, and I was a truck driver and worked on the docks, and then by kind of fickle luck, whatever you want to call it. It's a great book, Flight of the Rondoni, by the way. I ended up a trader. And like I said, we had 3 New York Stock Exchange memberships. We were members of the Eurex, Sofx, the DTB, which Chicago Board of Trade, Chicago Mercantile Exchange, Chicago Board Option Exchange. I mean, everything. And I always had to think outside the box because, like I said, I'm a Catholic, and I went to a Franciscan seminary. I wear the tau. My sons wear the tau, the Franciscan tau. Bobby Kennedy actually wears the tau. Well, I gave him one with the K on it. And he as well is very fond of St. Francis. So when you want to be ethical, and at the same time you want to be effective, and you're doing it in industries like healthcare, you don't have a choice. You have to think outside of the box.
So give me a picture of what can happen next.
Okay, so my dream. I've met, Obama, President Obama. I made music for him, actually, to be quite honest, and did some work. And I met Kamala Harris. I met President Trump. I've met Vice President Vance. I know Bobby Kennedy. And I'm a completely apolitical guy. But Tim Scott, Senator Scott, one thing that they all have in common, and one thing that they've all told me at one time or another, is that they support the idea of having accessible gene therapy for our patients, our sickle cell disease patients in particular, because in America we have 100,000 of them. And I can't even begin to tell you the suffering of these kids, these people, the strokes that they have, the living moment from moment and not knowing if all of a sudden you're going to be, not able to drive your car or not able to walk. I mean, it's crazy. It's really so sad and so tragic. So whether we're talking about President Trump, who truthed our story, or we're talking about Chuck Schumer, or who I met once as well, they're all behind an accessible cure, gene therapy cure for sickle cell disease and thalassemia. And in my little way, I'm a little guy, I'm not that bright. Like I said, I didn't graduate from high school. I won't be around that much longer. I mean, how much time do we have? But in my own way, I'm praying and hoping that my project can unite the Chuck Schumers and President Trump, President Obama, etc., all together in a certain sense behind this accessible cure for sickle cell disease and thalassemia. And we can all be joyous in it and see that we really have so much more in common than we have in conflict. And that's become my recent dream, and I hope that I'm strong enough to see it happen.
How long until Minirolo could be fully licensed, assuming these final trials go well?
Yeah, 1.5 to 2 years. But we'll be in patients within 6 months, both in the United States and Europe. And then a lot's going to depend on the administration, how they see things. But yeah, I think that we could be a product within 1.5 years.
A final thought as we finish?
If I made any errors in speaking or wasn't as articulate as I should have been, I apologize. My favorite poet, actor in Italy, his name is Toto, and he says that he took his heart to school and tried to teach it how to read and write. But his, as mine, is an illiterate heart. And we were only able to learn one word: love.
Well, Patrick Durandi, it's such a pleasure to have had you on.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm honored. I love your show. The people that you bring on here are incredible. I love that Hazan, I think her name is, incredible. I mean, really, and I compliment you for all the good you're trying to do for our country and our world.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining Patrick Durandi and me on this episode of American Thought Leaders. I'm your host, Yanya Kellick.